In the world of ancient Rome, there were more than 5 million people in chains. Their backs were bent from years of labor under the hot Roman sun. They had lost all hope of ever being free, or so it seemed. Every day, hundreds upon hundreds of slaves met their doom in the brutal arenas of Rome. The crowds cheered while these men fought for their lives, wielding swords, nets, and tridents. But even death didn't set them free, for even the dead weren't spared by the Romans. To these men, every step was a struggle, every breath a torment, for if they fell behind, their masters would punish them severely. And if they stopped breathing, they would become one with the lions. Yet none of them gave up. None of them complained. Not one single slave dared to look back, because behind them was the past, a past full of pain and suffering. And ahead of them was Rome, the eternal city, which they hoped one day to call their own. But there was one slave named Spartacus. He wasn't like the others. His heart burned with an insatiable desire for freedom, and this made him dangerous to the Roman Empire. We will take you back to the days when Rome was at its peak and find out how Spartacus became the greatest slave the Romans ever had. Welcome to the channel. Subscribe for more cinematic videos about legendary people from history. When Spartacus was born, the sky was filled with stars, and the earth was filled with the songs of freedom. He grew up in Thrace, where the mountains touched the clouds and the rivers flowed with wine. He was the son of a king, a true Thracian nobleman, living in a world of honor and freedom. But fate had other plans for him. One day, his village was attacked by Roman soldiers. His parents were killed right before his eyes, and he himself was chained up and sold at the slave market in Rome. From that day on, Spartacus knew only pain and suffering. He spent his days in the mines of Rome, digging and hauling rocks, and his nights in the slave quarters, shivering in the cold and hunger. Every day he dreamed of escaping from his captors, but he didn't know how. Then one day, everything changed. An old gladiator saw Spartacus and told him that he could be something great, something more than just a slave. The old man offered to buy Spartacus and train him to become a gladiator. Spartacus jumped at the opportunity. He wanted to learn how to fight, how to defend himself, and how to take revenge on the Romans. So he left the mines and went to live with the old gladiator. He learned how to wield a sword, how to dodge attacks, and how to strike back. And after 2 years of training, he was ready. He could now fight in the arenas of Rome, and maybe one day he could use his skills to free himself and other slaves. But he didn't realize that the Romans had a plan of their own for him. Soon, Spartacus found himself in the infamous Gladiator school in Capua. This was the most ruthless place in all of Rome, only the strongest and most ruthless. Gladiators were allowed to enter, but for Spartacus, it didn't matter. He was willing to do whatever it took to get stronger. There he honed his fighting skills, enduring unimaginable hardships and emerging as a fierce and formidable fighter. Every day he risked his life in the arena, facing deadly opponents and dodging the sharpest blades in Rome. Each victory brought him closer to his goal. Each defeat made him stronger. It was here that Spartacus encountered Crassus, a fellow slave who shared his longing for freedom. Together, they devised a plan to escape from Capua and join the growing rebellion against the Roman Empire. But they had to bide their time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Spartacus trained hard, not only to become a great gladiator, but also to prepare himself physically and mentally for his daring escape plan. He wanted to be strong enough to lead the other slaves to freedom. During his time in Capua, Spartacus also met and befriended a mysterious woman named Varinia. She was the daughter of a rebel leader who had been captured by the Romans and sold into slavery. Despite her noble background, she had become a gladiator, proving herself to be a skilled and courageous fighter. Varinia became Spartacus's confidant, sharing his dreams for freedom and offering him unwavering support. Their bond deepened, and soon love blossomed between them. It was a love born out of adversity, strengthened by their shared struggles, and fueled by their desire for a better future. Together, Spartacus, Crassus, and Varinia forged an unbreakable bond. They studied the gladiator school, learning its routines and identifying its weak points. They observed the guards, noting their patrols and schedules. Every detail was crucial to their plan. Meanwhile, Spartacus continued to excel in the arena, winning the admiration of the crowd. The Romans loved a good fighter, and Spartacus was the best of the best. But little did they know that he was playing a double game. While putting on a good show for the masses, Spartacus was planning his escape. Then came the night of the rebellion. As the moon shone brightly over Capua, Spartacus and his friends put their plan into action. With swift precision, they eliminated the guards, taking over the Gladiator school. Spartacus, armed with his trusty sword, led the charge, his eyes blazing with determination. Crassus, with his net and trident, was a force to be reckoned with, while Verenia, wielding a dagger, moved like a shadow, striking with deadly accuracy. Together, they freed the other slaves and gladiators, igniting a fire of rebellion that would spread throughout the Roman Empire. As dawn broke over Capua, the gladiator school was a scene of chaos and destruction. The Romans were caught off guard, their authority shattered. Spartacus, with his loyal band of followers, had struck a blow for freedom that would echo through the ages. But their journey was far from over. Ahead of them lay the vast expanse of the Roman Empire, with its legions of soldiers and unyielding grip on power. Spartacus and his army of rebels, consisting of former slaves, gladiators, and disillusioned Romans, set out on a perilous journey through hostile territories. They fought against Roman patrols, ambushed supply convoys, and liberated enslaved people along the way, swelling their ranks. Through it all, Spartacus's leadership and military prowess became evident, inspiring hope in those who had long despaired of freedom. We last saw Spartacus as a newly escaped gladiator alongside a handful of his fellow fighters. After making their way through dangerous terrain, evading Roman patrols and drawing in new recruits along the way, they had grown to a small army of 2,000 men, but this was still nothing compared to what lay ahead. In front of them stood the Roman Senate's most elite fighting force. 3,000 Roman legionnaires led by the infamous Marcus Licinius Crassus. Crassus, known for his ruthlessness and ambition, had spared no expense in hunting down the rebels. He had assembled the best soldiers Rome could offer. Men who had honed their skills in countless battles across the known world. Their armor glistened in the midday sun, a testament to their martial prowess, and their disciplined ranks spoke of years of training and obedience to Caesar. In the face of this, Spartacus knew he had to inspire his men to remind them why they had left their homes, their families, and their chains behind. "Brothers," he cried out over the din of the approaching armies, "do you remember why we are here? Do you remember the life that awaits us if we fail? Fight for the woman you love. Fight for the family you hold dear. Fight for the life that Rome has denied us." His words, a clarion call to arms, echoed through the valley, stirring in each man the strength to face the coming storm. As the two armies drew closer, the tension was palpable. The fate of the rebellion, perhaps the fate of Rome itself, hung in the balance. Now, it's time for battle. As the clash of steel on steel rang out across the valley, it became clear that this was no ordinary battle. For the rebels, every strike was a testament to their leader's words, every parry a step towards freedom. They fought with the desperation of men who had nothing left to lose and the determination of those who had everything to win. The Roman legionnaires, for their part, attacked with the precision of a well-oiled machine, their movements a deadly ballet of violence and control. Yet, as the battle raged on, something remarkable happened. The rebels, though outnumbered, held their ground. They parried, thrust, and dodged, their makeshift weapons flashing in the sunlight like 1,000 stars. Spartacus, ever at the forefront of the battle, fought with the ferocity of a lion, his every move a calculated risk, every breath a defiant challenge to the might of Rome. It seemed as though the tide of war was turning, that the very foundations of Roman power were being shaken by the courage of these unlikely heroes. As the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the battlefield, it became clear that neither side would claim victory that day. With heavy hearts and weary limbs, the rebels retreated, disappearing into the gathering darkness, taking with them the hope of a new dawn. Despite the losses they had suffered, Spartacus, a small band of rebels, continued to grow in numbers and in strength. With each passing day, more and more gladiators and slaves alike, drawn by the promise of freedom or simply sick of servitude, joined Spartacus' banner. He had shown them all that there was another way, a way out of the darkness, a way to the light of liberty. And so they traveled south, a growing throng of rebels, united by a common dream. In the meantime, news of Spartacus' victories against Rome's elite forces spread like wildfire across the Mediterranean. It reached the ears of men and women who had known slavery, who had tasted the bitterness of oppression. Throughout Italy and Greece, In the bustling cities and the quiet countryside, whispers of revolution began to stir. Slaves huddled in dark corners, sharing stories of a man named Spartacus, a warrior who dared to dream of freedom. And in their dreams, they too fought for their own liberation. Meanwhile, back in Capua, the Senate was consumed with worry and anger. The thought that a mere gladiator, a slave, could lead a rebellion against Rome was an insult to their pride, an affront to their power. They sent out more legions to put down the revolt, each one more brutal, more ruthless than the last. But Spartacus and his followers were ready. With each new challenger, the rebels grew in skill, in strategy, in power. They learned from their opponents, adapting their tactics, honing their weapons. They turned every defeat into a lesson, every setback into a stepping stone towards their ultimate goal, freedom. Yet it wasn't just on the battlefield that Spartacus made his mark, in the hearts and minds of the people. His courage, his compassion, his unwavering belief in the cause had won them over. He was more than a rebel leader. He was a symbol of hope, a beacon of freedom in the darkness of oppression. To see the full extent of Spartacus' revolt and how it changed Rome forever, check out our video on the full story of Spartacus. It's a tale of courage, of sacrifice, of the indomitable spirit of humanity in the face of adversity. As the dust settled on each battle, the people whispered tales of Spartacus' exploits, of his bravery, his strategic brilliance, and his unshakable commitment to the cause. And with each retelling, his legend grew, becoming larger than life itself. Then came the final confrontation. Rome had amassed a force unlike any it had ever deployed before, 80,000 soldiers strong, led by the infamous general Marcus Licinius Crassus. It was a force designed not just to defeat the rebels, but to crush them, to send a message that would echo through the ages. Yet Spartacus and his men were not daunted. They had come too far, fought too hard, sacrificed too much to give up now. Besides, they were not just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for every shackled soul in Rome's vast empire, for every heart that yearned for freedom, for every dream that had been crushed under the heel of oppression. As the two armies faced off, the fate of Rome and her slaves hung in the balance. It was a battle that would test not just the mettle of the soldiers, but the very soul of the empire. Spartacus, standing tall amidst the chaos, rallied his men. His voice, though hoarse from battle and hardship, carried the ring of authority, of a leader who knew the odds but cared little for them. "Brothers," he cried, "today we fight not just for ourselves, but for every man and woman who has ever known the sting of slavery. Today we fight for the right to be free, to live with dignity, to look the sun in the face without shame." His words, a battle cry that echoed across the plains of Italy, spurred his men into action. They fought with the fury of cornered wolves, their eyes blazing with the fire of freedom, their movements swift and deadly as serpents. The Roman legionnaires, taken aback by the ferocity of the attack, found themselves on the back foot. For the first time in their history, they were facing an enemy who did not break, who did not yield, who fought not just for land or gold, but for the very essence of their humanity. Yet, as the battle raged, it became clear that Spartacus's army, for all their courage, for all their righteous anger, was destined to meet defeat. The sheer numbers of Rome's army, the weight of their discipline, and the glint of gold on their armor told a grim tale. Amidst the carnage, Spartacus fought on, his spirit unbroken, his resolve unbent. He was a thorn in the side of Rome, a living testament to the failure of the empire's might. But as the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows of despair across the battlefield, Spartacus knew that victory was not to be. He rallied his remaining men, the ones who had endured the horrors of war and the bitterness of defeat. And with a heavy heart, he led them away from the carnage, away from the false promise of freedom. In the end, only Spartacus remained. Wounded, weary, and surrounded, he knew that his time had come. Yet as the cold steel of the executioner's sword touched his throat, he looked up at the unforgiving sky and smiled. For in that moment, he was not just Spartacus, the gladiator, Spartacus, the rebel. He was Spartacus, the symbol, the embodiment of freedom in the face of tyranny. And that, he knew, was a legacy that death itself could not touch. His head fell, not with the dull thud of a fallen log, but with the resounding boom of a revolution that would echo through the ages. And so the story of Spartacus came to an end, a story of courage, of camaraderie, of the unending human spirit in the face of overwhelming odds, But his story doesn't end here, because Spartacus, the name, the symbol, the dream, lives on. He's the voice that speaks to the downtrodden, the hope that shines in the darkest hour. For Spartacus is more than a historical figure. He is a timeless ideal, a beacon of courage that shines on inspiring generations to come. So Spartacus, the legend, lives on. May his story continue to echo through the halls of history, reminding us all that even in the darkest of times, hope, courage, and the dream of a better world endure.